Hey, friends. Welcome to another bonus episode. Today, I've got a teaser for you from a follow-up that I put out today with Tyson Schoene. The full thing is available right now if you go sign up for Patreon. It's $5 per month, and you can cancel at any time, no questions asked. I put a link right there in your podcast app. Tyson, you can listen to his original episode in episode 29. Really great guy. Tyson is the head coach of the Vertical World Climbing Team. This is one of the best climbing teams in the nation, if not the best. They've cranked out a lot of really high-end athletes, people like Quinn Mason and Melina Costanza. Quinn just won the U.S. National Championship in lead, and Melina took second. And then Melina just won the bouldering National Championship. Quinn took fourth. We talked about that event in this episode. Also, Sean Bailey came from that team. He won multiple World Cups this year and climbed his first 515C with bibliography. Just incredible. And Drew Ruana as well, who's been on the show and who's climbed many, many V16s, including a V16 first ascent this last year, and is just on a total rampage. So that's the caliber of climber that we're talking about coming from this team. And Tyson Schoene, the head coach, is not entirely responsible, but definitely deserves a lot of the credit for so many of his athletes turning out so dang good at climbing. So this was a really fun conversation. We talked about nationals and how that went. You'll hear that in the teaser. And then we went on to talk about what us adults can learn from how Tyson coaches his team kids and what we can do to mimic their preparation and what's different, what should be the same for newer climbers or experienced climbers who never got the chance to build that kind of a base that all of his kids have. We also talked about why Tyson thinks it's really important to keep training simple and what that looks like for his kids and also for very high-end athletes that he's worked with, people like Nathaniel Coleman and Sean Bailey and Quinn and Melina. So his thoughts on simplicity and how to avoid overcomplicating your training and what he looks for there. And we also talked about the importance of using our climbing experiences to find the right questions rather than focusing on answers. And that was a really cool idea that I'd never heard before and gave me a lot to think about. So I think you guys will enjoy that as well. And we also threw in some more practical stuff towards the end. Tyson shared one of his favorite strength training tools that he uses in their weight gym. And it made me excited to try some new ideas for a project that I want to do next summer when I go back to Rocky Mountain National Park. So that's what you're getting if you choose to sign up for Patreon. Again, the full episode is available right now. It's about an hour and a half total. You'll hear the first 25 minutes for free in this teaser. And then there's a link right there in your podcast app if you want to go finish the episode. You can do it today. It just takes a few minutes to sign up, and there are 27 follow-ups available now for patrons, and you will immediately have access to all of them as soon as you sign up. And without further ado, please enjoy this free teaser with Tyson Schoene.
Steven.
I can hear you.
Yeah, tight. Here, hold on. I can get video too.
There we go.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, man.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Cool. Everything's good. Just,
Nice.
It's been a busy week.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sure.
Let's jump right into that in a second. I'm already recording, ready to go.
All right.
But yeah, before we just dive straight into the good stuff, I'd love to hear how you've been. And I think it's funny. Last time we talked, we did a phone call, and I don't know if I've ever done this since, and I loved it, but we had never talked before. I answered the phone call. You're like, Steven, and we just rolled straight in, had this whole episode, and then hung up at the end. And that's exactly what I published. And
totally,
I loved that. But this time I want to start a little slower and ask you,
Sure.
Yeah. How are you doing? What you been up to?
Yeah, everything's good. You know what, man? I've just been busy with climbing team. That's sort of what's been going on is, We had a pretty crazy year last year, as everyone did. And I think after you and I talked, we, I'm pretty sure like we had to shut down again, and then we opened again, and then maybe we shut down again. I forget exactly when we talked last, but um, man, things are good. We went into a weird season last year where there was no real local comps. It was all virtual comps type of thing, which just to, put that out there quickly, it was, all online, basically. The kids would show up and they would have a little scorecard that they would track their attempts via their phone or via whatever, and then submit that. And then qualify through. And then we did have a regular regional championship, and then we ended up having a regular national championship, and that was last July. And then we took August off and right back into it in September. I brought on a bunch of new coaches, and we got a ton of new kids. There's just so much enthusiasm for competition climbing for the kids, and it's been really cool, man. It's been, I don't know, this is literally my 20th year coaching with these kids, and man, it's bigger and better than it's ever been. It's just, it's so much fun. I really am enjoying it for sure.
That's incredible to hear that. Are things more or less back to normal and at this point now? You and I are talking in November 2021 for people listening.
Yeah, for the most part, things are, we don't have any limitations at the gym. We don't have anything like that. Folks are still wearing masks, but that's about it. COVID actually showed me, a whole bunch of things, that's for sure, but almost a more efficient way to run rock climbing team. For a very long time, we were running where we would run Monday through Friday, come when you can, that type of thing. I wanted to give everyone all the options in the world. And with COVID and the restrictions that we had at one point, where we had capacity restrictions, we had to tone the time down to 2-hour blocks, 15 kids maximum, that type of thing. They all had to make reservations to do it. And dude, we've kept that. We don't have those restrictions right now, but I've kept the whole system. And what it's done for us is it's allowed me to staff better than I was before, get the right number of kids to coaches ratio type of thing. But also, man, it's putting a little more emphasis on the, while you're here, the, quote unquote, while you're here training. Because we're only doing 2-hour blocks where we used to do 3-hour blocks. So for the older kids, they stay a little bit longer, but for the younger kids, they're in and out in 2 hours. They're not doing 5 days a week. They may be climbing 5 days a week, but we're doing 3 to 4 days a week practices. And in my mind, it's working really well. We're keeping kids real injury free. Sort of, I don't want to say less volume, but maybe less volume, less intensity during the training period. And then for the rest of the week, they just get to climb and have some fun. And I think it's really working really well because a lot of our kids are better than they've ever been. So,
wow,
20 years in, and we're still trying new things every single year just to see what's working and what's not working, or what isn't working and stuff like that.
Yeah, great to hear that. That's so interesting. I just imagine that it must be, even if they don't realize it, it must be bringing the kids in with a little bit more intention. If they have to reserve a time slot and they only have 2 hours and there's less days, like it's time to show up and put your head down and go to work.
That is it. That's a really good point. And that's exactly the feeling that we have. It's, there is a bit of, I think with less structure before, it wasn't a problem by any means. We ran it like that for years, as far as like when your training days were and stuff like that. And we still have that to a degree. However, we're a little bit more hands-on with how much time they spend with us directly. Whereas I think in the past, if kids were climbing 5 days a week, they were climbing 5 days a week with us, meaning the coaches. Now we're doing, 3 days, 4 days. I'm between all 3 gyms, and most of my coaches are between all 3 gyms as well. So we're getting our eyes on a bunch of different kids. We have 90 plus kids on the team. So,
Wow.
we're getting our eyes on everybody. They're working with different coaches, getting different ideas. And they're all traveling between the gyms as well now. Whereas before they would stay fairly central. If they were a Redmond kid on the east side there, they would generally stay there. If they were a Seattle kid, they would stay at Seattle. And we were able to open our Linwood gym a couple of years ago, and now we've really been utilizing that as a training facility. So all the kids are going from Redmond or Seattle, where say Seattle's your home gym, then they go to Linwood for 1 day a week, that type of thing, just for variety, or vice versa, whatever. It's working really well, man. It's cool.
That's awesome. I was going to ask that. What is the benefit of having the kids move around to more gyms? Is it just the terrain variety, different setting?
Yeah, variety.
Variety. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that, it's nice to have your familiarity, your comfort zone, that type of thing. But as far as competition goes, we always have to make everything comfortable, right? For you to be able to perform at your best, we make the uncomfortable comfortable. And sometimes that is just going to different gyms and different types of setting, different walls, the more, the better. So that's sort of the idea behind it. And different coaches too, it's, some kids work really well with me in a certain capacity, in certain ways, whether it's the training aspect or the mental aspect, and some of the kids work better with the other coaches on the training aspect or the mental aspect, whatever. It's just nice to have a really good support group that hits on all angles and sort of checks a lot of the boxes. And I feel like we're able to do that with the setup that we have now.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Super cool to hear that.
Yeah.
Tyson, this is fun timing. We're just on the tail end of national championships. And things went really well. Things seem to have gone really, really well. Yeah.
Yes,
fill in some color for us. Tell me about the event, about the comp itself, and then how things went down.
Sure. Open or elite or whatever they're calling it now, the pros, I guess. The championships was this week. It was last weekend and finished up on Wednesday. And our older athletes did really well. We had Quinn Mason competing. We had Melina Costanza competing. We had Sergey Lochno competing. Quinn O'Francia competing. Gabe Galen competing. Maddie Dennis competing. Pretty sure that was it. Yeah, it's just cool to get back to a real comp, man. Like Youth Nationals was fun last summer for sure. Like no doubt, everyone was really excited and. But that's a very different situation. You have, don't quote me on the numbers here, but let's just say 600 kids competing. That's like a couple thousand parents, coaches from all over the country, all those types of things. It's a totally insane event that ran for, I think we were 6, 7, 8 straight days, 12-hour days, that type of thing.
Wow.
Super fun, amazing. We did really well at that event too. We're able to, as far as team championships go, keep ourselves on the podium. Quinn Mason was junior in the junior category, sport climbing champion, which was amazing for her. She's been working for that her whole life. And this one, Quinn Mason was sport climbing national champion again,
Wow.
but for the adults. And that was really fantastic. Melina Costanza was second place at that in the sport climbing section of it. And then for boulders, Melina Costanza was first place. So national champion there. And Quinn ended up being in fourth there. She was real close to the third place finish. She was just, her hand slipped out of the finish hold and she would have done it. But I don't know, man, we're just real proud. And it's cool to see those dreams come true, as they were. I think when I got Quinn, her family's been around the gyms for a very long time. Very good friends of mine. I've known them a very long time. So her and her sister joined the climbing team very young. I think Quinn was 7 years old when she started training with us. Melina was 8 years old when she started training with us. And so we've been through the whole thing. I think Quinn's going to be 19 this year and Melina's going to be 22 next month. So it's been a long time coming, just watching it happen. And we've always dreamed that, we'll do well at youth competitions, but it's always nice to as well recognize that down the line we have the potential to this isn't the right word, but dominate a open category event as well. And I don't know, it's just cool, man. It's cool to see those two girls, realize their dreams, and then, have kids like Sean Bailey on the commentary, and, the other kids there cheering, and then all my kids at home cheering, and, watching live stream nonstop. And I don't know, man, it's just the best. It's the best feeling for sure. We're very proud of that situation.
You should be. Yeah. Amazing to see that. It's really fun to hear more about Quinn and Melina. Because last time, of course, we talked about Drew Ruana, who's been on the show, and he's done really well in competitions over the years, but he has just been dominating the outdoor rock climbs, the boulders, just climbing so many V16s in the last year or two.
Yes,
and Sean Bailey, man, just dominating at everything, winning World Cups. Yeah, 15C, right? Didn't he do bibliography?
15C, yeah. He did bib.
Yeah, just V16.
Last month or whatever. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's crazy. And when you and I were talking back and forth before doing this, there was a couple lines that you wrote that caught my attention. And one thing was, highlighting your current elite athletes like Sean, Drew, Quinn, and Melina. You said that each one of them is very different in their own way. And I think it'd be, for people listening, I just think it'd be really interesting to hear more detail about that, some of the differences, and maybe how broad the spectrum is as far as how you work with individual athletes. And then I think it'd be interesting to also focus on some of the commonalities, like what are some of the building blocks, the common building blocks that you've worked on with all four of them, despite them being really different athletes. But let's start on some of those differences. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, totally. I think one of the biggest things to recognize about when you're running a big climbing team like we do, and you have a fair amount of pretty elite athletes, they're never going to fit into the same box, right? They're never going to need the same things. They're not going to need the same. They don't have the same triggers. They don't have, and they're just different kids. But ultimately what we do in the beginning is we treat them all relatively the same as far as those building blocks. The one main thing that is very, very crucial in my mind is that at a very young age, they all, when we're talking about Melina and Quinn and Sean and Drew, and the list goes on, they all wanted to be coached. They recognized that at an early age. And then of course myself and the other coaches, we recognized that at an early age. So it's, you can have a ton of talent in a kid, but if they don't want to be coached, if they don't want to listen, if they don't want to learn, we have to adapt to them, of course, and try and help them through that. But I can probably say for the last 20 years, all of our elites were the ones that were like, tell me what to do at an early age. As they get older, it becomes quite a bit different, right? But at 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, they're all very familiar with being told what to do. So if you get them in the right headspace and early, and you're continuing to just sort of get them on the right track, they'll all do pretty much what you need them to do, and more to the point, what they need to do to then get to a certain point, like whatever, 14, 15, 16 years old, when they start really showcasing their individuality. And that's where we start recognizing what they need in certain aspects, and take them in different directions. I think last time we talked about Drew and Sean quite a bit and their differences. And as far as like Melina and Quinn goes, they as well are very, very different athletes, different mindsets. This currently, especially, like, it's very different mindsets, where Quinn has been training exclusively for competition climbing at a very high level for a lot of years. Melina, who's a few years older, she didn't take, years off by any means. It wasn't like that. She just sort of stepped away for a quick second while she was dealing with school. And then COVID hit, and then she was just full blown grind, but
Hmm.
they as well have. I mean, they all went through the same training in the beginning, right? As they got older, that's when we recognized what else they needed and sort of pushed them in different directions as far as that training went. But ultimately for us, it's always just about, when they're young, it's high volume. It's always been high volume, low intensity, high volume, just that repetition, which I think you and I talked about before, doing things 1,000 times before you try and apply them to anything. And it allows us to keep things fairly simple, but also gives them exactly what they need to where they don't have to think too much, because it can get, I mean, when they're young, I feel like it can get pretty overcomplicated if you really wanted it to, but I like to keep things real simple because we're thinking long-term. We're thinking like right now, what we're seeing with Sean, he's 25 years old. Like that's been pretty much the plan the whole time, was that he would start. I would love to say peaking, but I don't even know if that's a thing. We actually, last week in Salt Lake, he and I and Josh Larson and Meg Coyne and Zach, the U.S. national team guys, we were all talking about, peaking and not peaking and that type of stuff. And we're actually all kind of coming to terms with the fact that you can't really, if you're an elite level competition athlete, like we're not really trying to peak at all. It's it's keep it as long as you can. But yeah, like I was saying, for him, it's always sort of been the long-term plan of being able to get to where he is now, winning 3 World Cups this summer and doing the hard projects for the last year, that type of thing. And that all started when he was young, just, making sure that the things were in the right place. And that goes the same with these girls too, where they're, in my mind, yeah, they're winning championships right now, but they're still pretty far off from what their actual potential is.
Wow.
And I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I don't know if that answered the questions, but
well, we can always ask more. That's
yeah.
That's
I get
great.
distracted by myself, so I just sorry.
It's all fascinating. I'm hanging on every word, so nothing to apologize for. But that's exciting to hear, man. It'll be fascinating to see where they take competitions and rock climbing if they pursue that at a high level as well.
Agreed.
Are there still similarities between all 4 of those athletes? Are there still, base things that you have all of your kids continue to do in their training?
Totally. Well, as far as the training goes, like for example, Sean, he's not at home very much, right? So he and I get together when he comes home. He stays at my house for a few days before he goes and does something else. He's in Salt Lake a lot now when he's not traveling. We talk about his training for sure. Like we sat down last month when he was here on my porch and went over a program for the next few months, that type of thing. And it's not one of those programs, right, where we write it down and this is exactly what you're going to be doing, and these are the days and that sort of thing. And it's not like that. It's more just a broad vision that allows him to then go out and work with the coaches that he works with. He works really well with Josh Larson. Most of the national team kids are very involved with Josh Larson and his expertise, and Meg Coyne and Zach DiCristino and those guys at USA Climbing. So it's more like he and I just bounce ideas off each other. And I think it's, setting the tone for what then he gets to go do with the other coaches. He goes, when he's in Slovenia, he's working with Roman. When he's in Japan, he's working with, the guys over there, I would say Katsu and, all those folks over there. Whereas, Quinn, for example, she, grew up with us and has been in Salt Lake for the last year plus, and we haven't talked about her training at all. Almost zero. That's all been exclusively with Josh Larson for the last year or so. And it's really been helpful for her. It's for us, it's we like to consider ourselves, we're all family, right? Vertical World Rock Climbing Team is family in that sense, right? So just like any family situation, they need to go outside of the family to truly get what they need. And she's doing a really good job of getting a process together that has worked really well for her, and with USA Climbing and with Josh Larson and Meg and them. And it's again, setting the tone for her to win some championships. She was just really well prepared for this event. Whereas Melina, was off at college for a bit, came home for COVID. Her and I started working together hands-on in July to sort of get her back because she hadn't competed in a while, so she didn't know like where she was. She was national champion as a youth twice, collegiate national champion. And then when I saw her last spring, and then as well right after youth nationals, honestly, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was just so leveled up. It was pretty bonkers. It was nuts what she was able to do. But of course, she hadn't been tested yet. She didn't know. I didn't know. I feel like I know what I'm looking at, but at the same time, I'm like, geez, man, I don't know what this is. Then she was able to go and do a couple tests as far as competition goes, and she dominated pretty easily. So it was nice to know that she was where she thought she was and where I thought she was. And then we just go from there. Whereas Drew, for example, he and I haven't talked about his training in a while because he clearly has something going on. He's not really working with coaches right now, but he's also doing his own thing. He's coaching. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen pictures of his home wall downstairs with all the boys, and dude, they're getting after it, man. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So as far as like the training goes, the similarities between all of them, that was all when they were young, right? That was all the same type of training. It was the base building, the volume, different intensity levels, that type of stuff, which really sets the tone for when they're able to get with some other coaches and gets more outside the gym experience, meaning our gyms, world experience. And as far as competition goes, like more competition experience, like at an international level. I feel like that really has made a pretty big difference for all of them. Sean especially, but also you see Quinn after youth nationals, and she was champion. She was able to go to a couple World Cups and a World Championship, and then a Youth World Championship. And she was pretty disappointed in her performances there. But you know what? In my personal opinion, they were still definite wins because she was able to come back with some really good knowledge and really good information for herself that set the tone for being the best prepared she's ever been this last weekend. So it's pretty cool. We're trying to take away the results, right? Like that's, for me, it's we're trying to get those out of there. You can't over focus on the results. You can be 10th place, when maybe you should be winning. But if you're learning what you need to learn at that 10th place to really, set it up for next time, then in my mind, you're winning at that event for sure.
I love that.
And I think all those kids have been through that. Melina's had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and Quinn has had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and Sean has had a lot of ups and a lot of downs, just like all these competition athletes that, are throughout USA Climbing and throughout the world. There's a lot of ups and downs, and you're learning every single time. And I'd like to think that the downs are way more important, way more important than the wins for sure. Yeah.
You and your coaches have such a long-term vision for all your athletes, starting with them at age 6 or age 8 and having these kids show up that want to be coached. You've already worked with Sean Bailey for close to 20 years, which is mind-blowing to me to think about, given that he's 25. And I want to ask you about your thoughts on like how those building blocks that you start with your kids relate or don't relate to adult climbers that start later in life, that are still new to climbing, but they're already older than someone like Sean. And I fall into this trap too. I interviewed Drew and of course want to geek out with him about his training, but I'm asking him what he's doing now for his training. And I probably should be asking him what he did when he was like 12, because that's when he was closer to my ability level.
Yeah, he was already climbing like mid 514.
Exactly. So maybe 10 years old, 11 years old.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on that? Like, should we be, as adults, starting climbing with less time on our hands, with less adaptation potential, things along those lines, fully developed bodies, should we be taking as much time to do some of those foundational things? And how would you coach an adult through that?
I would do the same thing.
Hey, friends, thanks again for listening. If you want to continue the rest of this episode, there's a little more than an hour remaining in addition to what you just listened to. The full episode is available right now. You can go listen to it by signing up for Patreon, patreon.com/thenuggetclimbing. You can find a link right there in your podcast app, or you can find it at thenuggetclimbing.com. Takes just a few minutes to sign up. That'll get you access to more than 24 follow-up episodes, lots of really great conversations there. And you'll also get access to ad-free episodes, and you'll get the opportunity to submit patron questions for upcoming guests. So all of that for only $5 per month. You can think of it as buying me a beer at the brewery after a great conversation on the podcast. And it really helps out a lot. I really do appreciate the support, and Patreon is what is keeping the podcast going at this point. So thank you so much to everyone who supports the show. Thanks again for listening to the teaser, and we'll see you next Monday for another episode.
Move with the rhythm, shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.